U kent die? Ja, maar die zijn denk ik allemaal al vol. Dit is... En dit is gewoon ja, klassieke smaken. A book about universal wisdom, inclusive, everything is connected, and you are also part of that. That idea that that the cosmos, the macrocosmos, and our microcosmos, that it is all connected, and that started a journey to collect books, testimonies, ideas of free minds of the past, and he collected this, and that became the Library of Hermetic Philosophy, the Egyptian Hellenistic wisdom. And that is today 30,000 books with influencing many other to bring back this hidden riverbed of knowledge and bring it back today. After a period we opened this place as a museum because we said let's share wisdom for everyone and not only for the academics and the specialists. So that's what we did. We used images, and one of the images I will tell in a minute about. But we are now in a new phase of our development, because if you open science, in traditions, in music, in architecture, whatever, mathematics, and they are can all be inspired by the traditions that you find in this library. So that's, and connect East with West. And also now, I will upstairs tell something about it, because Annette is not here. But we want to tell something about this man, James Forlong, in his life, about all the cultures and about everything he knew or could find in that momentum. And I want to present this because it's not only about the Hermetic philosophy or the Chinese wisdom, it's about wisdom all over the world from all of us, in all generations, in all cultures. James Forlong, the ingredients of who we are together on this small, beautiful planet. This part until here, there are different periods where wisdom and life is developing, but also influencing each other. And it's theism. It's about gods like Zeus and the Quran, world religions, Taoism, Hinduism, Jainism, all the isms together. And this is 1900. So this gives an idea that although our collection is about the Hermetic philosophy, and we are quite unique in that, it's put on the UNESCO World Heritage, Memory of the World of the Dutch culture. We want to share in the museum that it's not only about Hermetic philosophy, but actually you can go to Zen Buddhism in Japan and the Amazon, all these different wisdom currents. They are all forms with people that find their own way, but if you go to the essence of a culture or through science or architecture or whatever your form is, then you come all to the big questions of life and what your part is in that and how we are connected. Who am I, where am I from, what's my destiny? So that's all the things we want to, but of course it's about the books as well. We have that upstairs in a minute. Dr. Corey Andrews will tell about that. And we will introduce you a little bit in the Hermetica and the Kybalion. But maybe it's nice if you have some questions about this general information that we can... Ik denk dat... en dualiteit, hoe leg je dat uit? Of yin en yang, geest en materie? Dat kan ook... Dat vind je ook de kosmische
mooie vraag.
Hè, met de sterren. Ik bedoel, eigenlijk in... Only variations. Yes, absolutely. I do my best to explain what I think or what I can do my best.
What is the universal underlying substance of wisdom?
Within all the sculpture.
Yeah.
So again, to find first the common vocabulary, but also the difference in your vocabulary, and that makes you to work the big as possible. So I don't know whether in Hermetica, because it's always big and close, not very open. Nowadays you want to be open. So
Start with this Hermetica, because that's a good question. In the Hermetica, when they talk about God, they say God is a sphere, where from the center is everywhere, and there is no circumference. That's one of the things. But I also would like to say, Hermetica, we are maybe a heretical library in some views, and Hermetica does not mean, or hermetic, we know it is hermetically sealed, but that happened through history, it became that. It's not hermetically closed, or forbidden, or hidden, or mysterious. It's not even hermetically open, it's hermetically including all. That's the original meaning of Hermetica.
okay.
So it's holistic. And if I am correct, if I would say it in a Chinese way, also responding to you, what is behind everything. If you have Qi, Wu Qi, the highest energy, divine God, that manifests itself in yin and yang, spirit and matter. And through yang, within yourself you can bring that together, and from yang you can reconnect to Wu Qi. So that is just a idea to keep it simple, but of course it's much.
Okay, I agree with you, but from the practice
Yeah.
itself, because so they know, I'm a Western doctor, I'm Chinese doctor. When I talk about Qi, energy, the Western doctor said it's rubbish.
Yeah.
So, but if you lose your Qi in Chinese medicine, you lose its soul of the Chinese medicine.
Yeah.
So that means you have to try to communicate to see what is the context of Qi in Western science.
Yeah.
But the Western science is not open for things immaterial.
Yeah.
So if you have that conflict, how do Hermetica will
Open it up.
come up to solve that conflict when things are incommensurable?
Yeah. I think in the Hermetica it's always what they say, as above, so below. So they are always, it's always in a balance. It's like this yin and yang. It's not only this or only that. It's always the same. But yeah, I don't know how far my knowledge goes. But you have in the Hermetica you have the 7 spheres, and then you can cross a border to the 8th sphere, and then to the 9th, and the 10th is then the divinity or things, and that is their idea of the reality. So it's about different levels or stratas, as we would call it, around the globe, of energy and vibration, and we resonate in our own consciousness or our own being by just this. For example, you always use the example of music. You can study music, you can practice it, and you can become a composer or whatever, but if you have no inspiration, you miss something. So where these two come together, the material world where we live in, and inspiration, or God, or whatever you want to say, we like to say also in these traditions, how can you bring that together? And of course, we have a research institute, and they are academically, but they study, this Gilles Quispel in the front, he studied.
I really like actually, so the substance behind wisdom, I immediately thought of Socrates, and ignorance is the substance behind wisdom. This idea that Socrates was the wisest man in Athens because he knew that you knew nothing. And one of the traditions represented in our collection called Rosicrucianism, which is deeply influenced by the Hermetica, they say similar idea that the height of knowledge is to know nothing.
Yeah.
So, at least in my opinion, and
7 colors, and ultraviolet and infrared. And so that is only from this barcode of the reality there is. We are only one line, and maybe even one dot on this line. And we think we know it all, but of course, and I think science is, I think you have spirituality.
Is there something or someone that does know, like you might as well know nothing, yes? How do you work with what you don't know, and does
I think
someone-
everybody can guide you your whole life, whatever you do, even if you're not religious or even against religion, or whatever you do, even if you're a child, want to cookie from whatever, you use your intuition to guide you. So sometimes something inside you already knows. If you meet a person, you can have in a split second or a nanosecond, you can have, your mind will say, oh, stop, why? Is it because the sun is shining, or what's happening? Or your emotions can say that. So we already know, but I think we have to start listening more to our intuition, and then use our filters to really be critical in all ways, also in what you do. And once you have the total picture, then you can also surrender to something what is bigger than yourself.
Would you connect?
Here is that, again, the source texts are digitized so that we can study them with whatever, that we can open up the wisdom traditions. And we are working with a gentleman from the Technical University in Delft to really have an original text. We want to connect everything, but you cannot do all at the same, so we want to bring the specialists in a field together and have, for example, natural medicine. We have a partner from a company in Switzerland. We had an introduction. They are from Antwerp. Maybe you can introduce yourself in a minute. We had to split in 2 rooms, but I took the time to tell something about the East-West Circle, but maybe you can already tell something, and maybe later we comments to your introduction. So maybe just
Back there are these really beautiful emerald tablets, and that's at the bottom of this table.
So I'm Dr. Duncan from
In this
Antwerp,
image you will
as
find
said.
on many alchemical laboratory walls.
I've been working on
they typically have this in
Chinese
grade.
culture for a very
far. So later on, then we'll give an information about his work. But maybe there are already questions about what I told about the East-West Circle, or in general, any questions?
Do you know what comes out of it? Do you have an intention of what comes out of these circles? The result on society or on thought, development?
Into our worlds, our work, and wherever we work, and to do that. And the circle is the idea with the group.
And at least in the Western canon, even throughout mythology and the deities and the planets and everything, they all follow this sort of like canonical.
In India it's the same. Ida Pingala and the moon and dependent sun.
How do you do that with German?
Yeah, it's interesting actually. German's one of the exceptions that the sun, for example, is feminine.
so the right people. I've been to China many times, and I've had some very good teachers, but some teachers, when I met them, were very old already, so I had very little time with them together, and they did not have enough time to teach in China. One of the things when you, and this is a very old story, when you want to do something like Taoism, you want to get into Taoist traditions, the common thing was to go looking for masters. And so that's the first.
The collection is really inspired by this doctrine of Prisca Theologia, which was an idea in the Italian Renaissance that the Medicis really believed in. So they were responsible for getting these Platonic and Hermetic texts translated. And they very much believed in this idea that in the remote antiquity there was this pure wisdom, this Prisca Theologia, this ancient theology that had been transmitted to humanity directly from God, and since then has been transmitted through the centuries, through different philosophical schools and threads through the different religions of the world, also known as the Golden Thread, and there's many books about it. And what I'll show you is one of our great pieces showing this idea very beautifully in image. This is by Robert Flood, 1618. Flood was one of the most important Renaissance polymaths and was the nemesis to Kepler. So Kepler, the pure astronomical, empirical, who exchanged many emotional letters with Kepler, thought that the universe wasn't like a mechanistic clock; it was more like a musical instrument. And so Flood always includes a creator in his system of the cosmos. And Flood was very worried about the rise of atheism as a consequence of the scientific revolution that was really coming online at that time. So this is volume 1. So this is the 3 realms of creation according to Flood.
And he was a master of Latin, by the way. Even in this period, Latin was the language of the educated, and his
And
6
to
volumes, which are
become
about
a
this much
bigger
shelf space on
community
our
with
they're tall
specialists
volumes,
and-
they're all in Latin.
and
He was an English
people who
philosopher.
can make the change for tomorrow.
So you have the
people
3
that
realms.
are
So
already
the
embedded
first inner
in
realm
hospitals
is the
or
realm of the
in
terrestrial.
whatever
That's where
technology
you find
or
the
in
mineral, the
philosophy
vegetable, and the
or
animal
in
kingdoms,
translation
which is
of
governed
text
by
or
this very
medicine or
primitive-looking
whatever.
human being
We
sitting
want
on
to
top of
bring
the-
all this
on top of the
change
world.
maker together.
And then outside
to
of
build
that
the
realm, you
future,
have the celestial
and also
realm. And that's
to
where you
build
have the
the
elements
circle
and
to
the
really make
names
a
of the
change for
planets,
tomorrow.
which is governed
And,
by this feminine
yeah.
figure here,
Maybe
sometimes
you
called
can
Sophia.
tell something. Or do
Wisdom,
we have questions
or
about
Mother
this so
Nature,
far?
perhaps. And then outside of that, you have the realm
If
of
you
the
have-
super celestial.
Yeah,
And that's where you have the
thank you.
different grades of angels.
Thanks, Annette, because
And there's
she
9 grades of
really
angels in,
was
Christian
the
angelology. And
the
Flood,
lady
there's
that
3 realms, so
that
Trinity.
said,
Staat er
"Wow."
allemaal.
And then
This
all
is
of that is
beautiful.
governed by the 4-letter
This is
Hebrew
so
name of
many,
God at the top
many
of the image, which is
the
very
potential is
typical
so big.
in a lot of the
Let's,
engravings,
uh,
and some of the ones we'll look
Let's
at.
go for it. I
Whenever
want
the
to
author is trying
dedicate,
to show this unity
time
at the beginning of
of
time
my
that is
precious
responsible
time
for creating everything,
and
they very
bring
typically
back
use that
together
4-letter
people. So
Hebrew
we sat
God
together with the
in
first group, and we immediately.
So this is one, and then the next one I want to show is a
invited
very
them
puzzling
because we
one.
had already
And
lectures
people
here,
come from
and
all over
my
the world to
parents
see this
know
next one,
him
and I
already
can't
quite long.
explain why.
Nee.
So Flood, rather than
She's
begin
making
with
a film,
objective
so if there's
description
someone
of physical
who does
reality,
not want to
he
be
begins
on
with
it,
Genesis.
let me know.
So in Genesis, you have this.
We
Ja, ik vond het niet zo mooi. Dus
So I'd be very curious to hear some of your thoughts about this. So, you know, if you think
Yeah.
to Genesis, you have the story, you know, the spirit of the Lord floated over the waters, you know,
Oh ja,
and
ja, zeker.
before order emerged, before light.
It's- yeah.
And that's a sort of common
it's
motif
part
in
also
creation
of
myths,
the idea
this
that we want
formlessness
to
at the beginning of
circle.
creation.
We want
Not only
it
in the
has
West, but also in
a digital
Mesopotamian
part,
story.
eh,
and,
on the
others.
net with
Nietzsche,
translating
Eliade,
text
wrote
or
a lot
making
about
it
this, Romanian,
available to share it.
historian.
So it's not
And
it's a physical one.
Flood
but also
decides to show
we
this by
want to
just
be
showing this
open
black
in
square,
a digital
which is
circle
actually
of,
quite.
the
He was
English
determined to
circle
make
or
this
the-
spirit plate. You have all these lines, and that shows
Oh, ja.
the copper plate engraving plate that had to
Gaat
be completely
allemaal
destroyed in order to make
Zoals het
this.
gaat.
So it was also
Totaal
very expensive to
anders
do
dan.
this. It could only been done for this purpose.
Ja, maar dit is wel.
Yeah.
Nou, nee hoor. In essentie is het helemaal oké. Dus ik ben er heel blij mee.
Yeah. Yeah.
En
Yeah. Sort of
het is
a
de kunst
pre.
om,
Pre-Big
om
Bang,
het zijn gang te laten
but
gaan.
I'd be very curious to hear your thoughts. So he calls it darkness and privation.
Kijk, bij
that's what
echte
was
grote
in
producties kan dat niet.
So that's the first stage,
Maar
and
dit
this
is,
image has been used for book covers, for
Intiem.
conference proceedings.
Intiem.
It's
Ja,
just
we
a
zijn
black square,
altijd.
but
We're always in
I find it very
trial.
powerful.
Always.
And then he moves through the next stages where, you know, fire appears in smoke. So there's the Big Bang. We might be anachronistic in calling it. So smoke, and let's see what else.
Ja.
It's a bit more complex here. You
Goed.
have fire
Ja, ik ben
emerging.
zeker tevreden.
Primordial
over
world,
de,
he calls it.
de kwaliteit. of die
So Flood is one of these great authors in our
Gedeeltes
collection that
aanwezig,
tries to
en
integrate
de
the findings of
acties.
natural philosophy, of science,
totaal
with
niet hoe ik het
this
georganiseerd
underlying
en gepland had.
mythological,
Dus
religious
helemaal-
structure. At least, you know, not in a dogmatic way, but in a sort of holistic way. Interesting.
Vlogen.
1618 was printed.
En dat vind ik ook leuk.
So this is volume 2, and I only showed this one because this is the model that Flood made,
Met dit kan dat.
that he juxtaposed against
Grote
Kepler's
productie
model.
niet.
See, Kepler's model was a three-dimensional model based on the Platonic solids, and Flood made this model, which is two-dimensional, where he associates the symbols of the planets to notes of the musical scale,
Vind ik het leukste wat
which he
is.
calls
Dus
the
je
music of the
plannen
worlds,
En dan
the harmony of
loslaten.
the spheres,
En dan-
and crucially, which Kepler
Ja.
had no need for, he said,
En dan
the
kijken
creator.
wat
So
wil er gebeuren. En
God,
niet
which
forceren
occasionally
wat
needs
je
to
gedacht
enter the situation to tune the musical instrument that is the
Ja,
universe.
precies.
And a
Maar als
previous
ik het niet
from the
van
other group, they
tevoren
said,
plan,
is God
wordt
tuning
het
it
een
because we're
rest.
putting it out of balance,
nu
or
komen er dingen
it's
uit hè, die
just
ik dus van tevoren niet bedacht had.
the inverse?
Die denk ik, voor de volgende keer gaan we dat anders doen. Maar dat
So
is de
Robert
reden
Flood,
ook
major
dat we-
figure,
dat we dit ook doen. Ja.
and very, very interesting and beautiful because it has all
dat
these
is een
beautiful
beetje-
engravings.
Ja, en voor jou van een afstandje.
Astrology, like all kinds of other schools of thought, military strategy.
Leuk. Ja.
Really interesting.
dat
Ja.
ene meisje dat niet op de
Ja.
film wilde.
These, I believe, were printed in Frankfurt. Yeah. There's a few printers in the period that would be willing to print a lot of this material, actually. In fact, right, yeah. So many of the books in this collection
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
to be found on the Index Librorum Prohibitorum, the list of prohibited books
Ja.
that the Catholic Church says you're not supposed to read.
Oh, maar dit is wel heel
And so
belangrijk
that
om mee te
actually
nemen.
makes, this is also a very
Ja,
young
maar
academic
heel
field of
belangrijk om
study
dit
to
mee
focus
te
on these
nemen,
forbidden traditions.
Dat we expliciet aangeven
So
wat
that
er voor
is
mensen
what makes it
verwacht
fun,
wordt,
because there's so
zodat
much
ze
research to
weten.
do,
Dus
but
dankjewel.
frustrating because it's, there's not a lot known about this stuff. But these were in Frankfurt, I
Nee.
believe. Yeah. And so there's a few prolific
Nou, heel
printers.
goed dat ze dat, heel goed dat
Theodore
ze
de
dat
Braai,
zelf...
yeah, in Frankfurt.
Ja.
There's a few printers in the period that were
Ja.
printing all of this stuff,
Maar
because
ik denk ook
not everybody was
voor
willing
ons
to
als
go into
East-West
some of this
Circle
stuff.
dat we aangeven...
But I would say, like, actually the
soort-
sexiest material
wat is het
is in
een-
manuscript,
een,
and it's
luisteren,
painstakingly
is het,
copied by hand in manuscript.
interactief,
So
ja.
we have an impressive manuscript collection.
Dankjewel.
So a couple of pieces to show before you have to leave.
Ja, ja.
This is one of the most beautiful
Nee,
engravings.
ik ook niet. Ik ook
Maybe
niet.
come around to have a look at
Dus ik
this.
snap dat heel goed.
It's always tricky with displaying these.
De-
This is perhaps the most famous alchemical engraving in history, really. And you can still
En dus
find this
de
engraving
sprekers
painted
pakken
or
hier
engraved
en gaan gewoon
on
daar zitten.
alchemical
Dat is het
laboratories
idee,
that
hè?
you can still visit in Bohemia,
ja.
in Central Europe and the Czech lands. So this idea, as above, so
Ja, het is
below,
meer
that's from
ruimte
the Emerald Tablet
ook. Snap je
document,
dus?
which is in Latin the Smaragdina Hermetis Tabula. And that's what you have at the bottom of the image, the Emerald Tablet text, which begins
Ja.
that which is above is like that which is below, and that which is below is like that which is
Zou
above.
je op de tafel
So we have the
dan een
above
kaartje
and the
kunnen
below
maken voor
worlds.
speakers?
And in the
Gewoon
above
een-
world, again, you have that four-letter
tafel,
Hebrew name
gewoon
of
een
God,
kaartje en dan-
flanked by the dove
Oh ja,
and the
helemaal
lamb.
goed.
So what are we looking at here?
Oh, nee, helemaal goed. Ja, dankjewel.
Yeah, the Trinity, yeah. So the Father, the Holy Spirit, and the Son.
Ja.
Just beneath that you have the zodiac.
Hallo. Hi.
And that's another hallmark
Kijk, je
of
groeten.
Western esoteric material. Even if they're
Oh,
fundamentally
natuurlijk. Sorry,
oriented,
ik
the
verstond jouw
Christians,
naam
like
niet
Flood, he
helemaal
was a
goed.
Christian.
Dennis. Hi, Dennis.
They don't
Fijn
mind
dat je er bent.
integrating a lot of this pre-Christian pagan wisdom into their system. So you find the zodiac there.
Ik ga ook net even
And then
de zaal
beneath
in.
that, you have the symbols of the planets associated to these beasts, which symbolize steps of the alchemical process, which begin with the bird of Hermes, the blackening stage. And that's when the matter gets burned in the vessel and turns black. And there's a whole series of
Niet,
stages.
eentje voor de bedjes.
And then on the left side, you have the.
Dit is
so
meer,
you
dit is
have
meer cuneiform.
this is a great
Yeah.
symbol of polarity. This image. So on the left side, you have
yeah.
the man, the active. So you have the sun, the phoenix, the lion, the symbol for fire and air, which are the
Ja, dus
upward
dit moet
facing
nog aangepast
triangles,
worden.
the
Volgens
element
mij gaan ze
symbols.
dat dadelijk...
So you have the active fiery masculine on the left side, and on the right side
ja.
you have the
Ja, ja,
corresponding
precies. Ja.
feminine. You have the woman there with the moon and the stag and the eagle,
30,
the water and
30
earth
mensen.
symbols, which are downward
En,
facing triangles.
Ze zijn
And then in the middle you have the
boven,
alchemist
ze komen zo naar
wielding
beneden voor
axes,
de
surrounded by trees
voor
with
de,
symbols of alchemical substances on them,
lunch.
combining
En
opposites. And
tijdens de
that's
lunch
one of
wordt de
the
kamer
motifs in alchemy,
gereed
to
gemaakt.
combine different substances to arrive at a unity.
Lunch is café, maar hier hebben ze
So this is just a
speakers,
really
hè, want
fantastic
dat vind
image
je fijn. Dat
showing
dat
this
laat-
idea. Any
Oh, this speech.
questions or comments?
Even lunchen. We hebben veel mensen.
Oh, zo, ja. Nee, die hier, dan kan ik daar...
Heel goed.
Yeah, there's some tourist industry setup around it. Like in Prague, there are two really fantastic alchemy labs. Speculum Alchemiae is the most impressive one. They had a flood in Prague like in 2011, and it destroyed part of the street, and they discovered this entrance to this underground tunnel that led to an alchemy lab that had been there since the 15th century. Perfectly preserved, like with all these vessels, potion bottles and things, and that just scratches the surface. You know, in Trebonja, just a bit south of Prague, you have another
Uiteindelijk gaan we
place
hopelijk een
to
soort
visit
van
alchemy labs
halve
in
cirkel
Brno, in the
creëren,
east, in
dat-
Moravia,
dat,
like Central
niet
Europe,
te formeel
especially
is.
because of Rudolf II in
en
Prague. He
uiteindelijk
was patroning a
eindigen we
lot
met
of these alchemists, and this image you
4
find in almost all
stoelen
of
hier
them.
voor de
So it's a very famous piece. This one.
debat of de dialoog.
So moving along,
Tot,
this piece the previous group liked the most. So this is a very unassuming little document, and doesn't look like much, but there's very little research done about this author and about many of these pieces in this collection. It's very understudied. So this is a work by a German called Stefan Mikkelspacher, 1615, titled Kabbalah, Mirror of Art and Nature in Alchemy, dedicated to the Rosicrucians, which is another rabbit hole we don't have time to go into, but is a big topic of my PhD. But what is amazing about it, it's this very short text that hasn't been translated in German, and is followed by these very puzzling and beautiful engravings. It's 1650.
Even,
This one. So this one we'll look at in some depth. So this is the third stage of the alchemical process called conjunction.
pionier
So-
een beetje, vanuit ons ook. Dus,
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and we have posters of this one, I think.
ja, heb jij zo
So you have the four elements. So you
you
have water, fire, air, and earth, and then the zodiac here.
What may?
And then you have the seven. So the seven classical deities, the planets, which are the gods, and days of the week,
Ja.
and metals of alchemy.
Dat is
So this is this doctrine of correspondences, which is another hallmark of the Hermetic tradition and the Western sort of secret tradition. So you have the seven. So here on the left is a woman holding a flaming heart and a mirror. If you know your mythology, this will really help. Who knows mythology?
And it's nothing.
Who's that?
Not there.
A flaming heart and a mirror.
Ik ben vanuit
So,
de East-West
reflection,
Circle, dat is
vanity,
een initiatief,
planet.
zijdelings met binnen-
Venus, yes, and Aphrodite, right, yeah.
Niet vanuit
That's
NSC
Venus.
zelf, maar het is een initiatief daar.
Yeah, so
Dat is
the
helemaal
planet
nieuw.
Venus, the goddess
Ja,
Venus.
nee, nee, dat is helemaal nieuw.
And
We
the
zijn,
symbol for female is the
we
circle with the
hebben
cross.
boven,
That's said to be the mirror of
pop-up.
Venus that she's holding.
En dit is onze eerste...
And her metal is copper because mirrors were made of copper for many millennia.
Nee, het was een nieuw initiatief
The
binnen
day
vanuit-
of Venus?
Ja.
The day.
Ik ga boven even kijken hoe het allemaal loopt. Ik heb vandaag wat meer spanddiensten dan verwacht. Maar
which in English we have
wij,
because of
wij hebben...
Freya.
Jij bent helemaal oké om te gaan, hè?
The next figure here, so now you know the universe we're working with. So this figure here, holding a sword and a shield. Yes, that's right, but we don't have a planet named Ares. Mars, yeah. Right, so the realm of the, so what's Mars known for? Yeah. Yeah, the martial arts. And the symbol for male is the circle with the spear,
Yeah, we
with the arrow,
try
and that's the
to-
shield and spear of
to
Mars.
give
And
as
that
many
symbolism goes back to
speakers
at
as
least the 2nd
possible,
century, even
give
in
them a very brief
Nijmegen in the west. in this part of the
idea
country,
to you
these
to
Roman
share
ruins
what
with
the
that symbol there.
potential of this group is, and of
and
course
the
it's
metal
very
of
limited,
Mars?
but by this
trickier.
condensed,
What are weapons made of?
we want
Iron,
to give you
yeah,
a
right.
taste of
Yeah, weapons
What-
were made of iron for a long time.
what we can build up
And
together, because
right, and
it's
the
not
day?
sending information. We want to embrace everything and
Oh,
and
okay.
be
Well, there we
connected
go.
so that we can all
All right, she's
add
revealed
to
herself.
this group. Because
Tuesday,
that's what
because
the
of
difference
Tyr,
makes, to do it
and
together,
Mardi
but in the
well,
same
Mardi in French,
spirit,
but
with
Mardi
the
Gras
same,
is what American tradition
idea
happens on
behind
Fat
it.
Tuesday.
yeah.
The next figure here is very unassuming. It's very difficult to determine who that is unless you see who he's opposing. So here, if you look really close, we have a couple of magnifying glasses. But this figure here is a woman with a moon above her head, so that's the moon. So who's the counterpart to the moon? Yeah, the sister of Diana. No, Diana is the sister of, who's the god of the sun? And of, Apollo, and moon missions, I was going to say. Right, so this is Apollo. And what's the metal of the sun? Gold, right, yes. And where are we at here? The day is, of course, Sunday. And the sun is sort of the father, of the solar system, you might say. And it's interesting how the Christians probably took advantage of that language to say the father is the sun, in their theology. So a lot of paganism in Christianity. In the very top here, it's hard to see, but he has a helmet with wings on it. And Hermes, yeah. So what's Hermes known for? Yeah. Intelligence. Communication. The messenger. And the Roman name for Hermes? Yeah, right. And there you have the day. Sorry? Exactly,
Send
that's right, yeah.
The first group down,
And Wednesday,
so that they can start their lunch. Is that
Mercury.
okay?
Or
And
Wotan.
it's the first group down, so it's going to be a bit more.
And,
Space.
right.
Perfect. Okay, I'll send them down to you.
So here we have the moon, so that is the planet. So what are the other correspondences of, so the moon, so we had gold, silver, and what's the day of the moon? Yeah, moon day, yeah. Lundi. So having to do also with the mind and lunacy, the realm of the mind. And and Diana, right, or Artemis. Right, nice. And then next, this figure, it's kind of hard to see, but he's wielding a lightning bolt. It's a male. Yeah, yeah, Thor, yeah, yeah, to some systems. Sorry? Yeah, yeah, that's the Greek name, yeah. But we don't have a Zeus planet, or a Thor planet. But we do have Jupiter, yeah. Jeudi, yeah, nice. And right. And the medal of Jupiter
And
is
on
10.
that note,
And,
it's a horrible
and then
to say
finally
this,
this
it's
figure
travel.
here, who you don't
travel
encounter, but you will
but
inevitably,
we've been nourished
wielding a scythe
mentally,
and a baby who
hopefully
he's about
also
to
you
eat, actually,
spiritually. But now we're also going to nourish
death,
our
yeah.
bodies so that you can fuel
Uranus?
yourselves for what is going
Yeah,
to
that's right.
transpire
That's
this
yeah.
afternoon.
I'm looking for another name
and
because we don't have a
of
planet
course
named
invite
Uranus,
you
but
to
that's
maybe
very well, yeah.
Just shortly with
Saturn,
your
yeah,
travel
yeah.
companion,
Yeah,
because you
Saturn.
will let each other
So what's Saturn
go
known
for the afternoon session. You don't have to remain in pairs
Karma,
to say your
Law,
goodbyes
cosmic
or
law.
your
The
well
planets
wishes
serve
for the furtherment of the journey. And perhaps you have
the
some
orbit of
insights,
Saturn's like 30 years, approximately
maybe
27,
also
30
thanks
years. And
for
in astrology, you have that
companionship
Saturn's return.
so far. And I'd like to invite you to go down to the cafe.
Yeah.
There is a
So everybody
wonderful
that's above
lunch
30,
for you,
you've
vegetarian.
made it. But then you have a
plus
second
some, chicken
Yeah.
balls.
Right.
Those aren't vegetarian.
He's often depicted with
Please,
wings in other engravings. Not in this one,
we'll be
but
back again
because Saturn is Chronos in the Greek, and Chronos is time, and time flies, and time consumes all things.
Okay.
And anyway, I love this engraving because you don't always have those characters grouped together in that way. And it's a great sort of symbolism 101 because it's all of those things simultaneously, and that's really how symbolism works. It's multi-dimensional and multi-interpretable. And so this is conjunction, and so you have the sun and the moon here, and the bride and the groom uniting, which is an eclipse, if you think astronomically. And then you have the 7 steps of alchemy, each of which is, I won't torture you with that, but that's also connected to each of them. And then the final motif, this is cutting edge research we're doing, by the way. There's no research on this thing. There's a single article, actually, by a Dutch woman. In the foreground, you have a figure here that's blindfolded, chasing a rabbit. Another figure chasing a rabbit down a rabbit hole, which is what we're doing. Any ideas?
Met de meting erbij?
Ja, maar kom zo meteen langs op de... Dus jullie hebben... Jullie hebben een, jullie hebben een tafel in de grote zaal waar je samen elkaar even de lunch kunt nuttigen.
And then someone else said, oh, it's actually the same person.
Daar staat een kaartje. Staat je computer op, heb je niet aangeraakt?
But it's, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. And maybe it's also purposely ambiguous a little bit.
Naar de café, daar kun je je lunch pakken. En dan naar de grote zaal heb je de speakers.
Makes me think of the exchange between Pilate and Christ. Remember when Pilate asks Christ what
vanmiddag ook.
Christ.
Na Alberto. Dus Alberto komt nog.
And one of the ideas is that truth is for you to
Jos. Eerst dan Kam,
so maybe there's that room for
dan Cyril, Marco. En dan
but we're not sure what it's
Jos. En dan gaan we spreken. Dus we hebben nog een heel middagprogramma.
Komt die uit België?
Die komt uit België, ja.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Ptolemaic cosmos, And but wasn't Pluto also degraded? He's, but then you don't have Neptune, you don't have Uranus, you don't have. So, yeah, this is the the period they're like puzzling over this mystery of 7. Why does it show itself in all these different areas? Yeah, that's as far as we got with the other groups. So now, should we continue or should we keep going?
Ik denk dat het nu al zo. Ja, ik denk dat het wel. Ja, ik ga dat regelen. Ja.
For interpretation for pictures, maybe?
Ik kom er zo aan hoor, als er niemand is.
I have no experience with that. I'm immediately distrustful, but it's probably going to replace me at some point. As a job.
Old knowledge.
Ja. Nee, die zijn ook klaar, alleen ze moeten meegenomen worden.
Zij hebben dit al gehad voor je.
Ja, ze zijn klaar. Ja.
I think it'll really be a great tool.
Make your way downstairs.
This is another really
To
nice
the
piece. This is a
cafe.
bit later. This is early 18th century. Theosophia Practica, practical theosophy. It's a divine wisdom
Nee,
practices.
sorry. Zij gaan nu naar de lunch.
And it's
Wij
also
komen
kind of
volgen.
amusing. It's a German text.
Ja, ook.
So you have the Holy Spirit shown above the head,
Ja.
Jesus over the heart, and then the Finisterwelt, of course, the dark world beneath the
Ja,
belt
ja,
there.
ja.
And then there's another beautiful engraving here that shows. So this, which people often interpret as a Hindu image, actually. They
vormen en
see,
doen en het is gewoon fijn om gewoon
yeah,
te
they see
beginnen.
Kali, or someone also mentioned Krishna, but it's actually, and people often see the chakras represented here, these seven.
Even
But these
kijken.
are the seven planets and which parts of the body that those planets govern. So it's a Western image, and it's gesturing to the heavens above and the earth below. So that Hermetic idea again is exemplified in this image.
Oh ja.
Yeah, it's also in the cafe. Yeah, right, yeah. Gichtel, yeah, Johann Georg Gichtel, yeah, 18th century.
Yeah.
And the book is dedicated to explaining how to purify yourself from a natuurlijke Mensch, I think it's called, this natural person, after the fall, and how to redeem yourself. Yeah, of course. And over time, the body loses that coloration and becomes clearer. And I mean, I could have selected 7 other books from the shelf basically at random, but you know, a few classic highlights. So you're very welcome to have a bit closer look at any of this stuff. I didn't go over this one. This is another really fantastic piece. We don't have 4 hours to go through, but this is the Amphitheater of Eternal Wisdom by Heinrich Kunrath. And there you have the Emerald Tablet of Hermes shown as an image. And the most famous engraving from this is the oratory laboratory image, which Jung actually really liked, Carl Jung. So this is another really beautiful piece showing the oratory and the laboratory. So the oratory, Kunrath, German, from Leipzig, this is 1609. He depicts himself in a position of prayer in front of his own book, probably asking for protection before he goes to the laboratory to do the dangerous alchemical experiments. It's filled with a lot of Latin aphorisms that the later Rosicrucians attached themselves to. So, for example, the laboratory is built on the pillars of experience and reason. So that's the scientific approach. Festina lente, that's another very common one. Make haste slowly. Or someone else translated as slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And it's also very unique in that it's a 3-dimensional image. There's not many like this in the period. Above the entryway to the very back, you have this phrase dormiens vigila, which Jung really likes. While sleeping, watch. So this idea to pay attention to your dream life, that dreams can be informative and can reveal things to you. And in the center of the image, you have a table filled with